Your fee is your freedom. Kill him and you're free from all binding contracts.
How will I find him? His program files indicate that his MO has changed. He does not haunt the alleys as he once did.
I have always found that if one makes the right kind of podcast, he can be attracted.
Podcast? I can make a podcast.
Welcome back to another episode of Spawnography. Hey there, Hellspawn. I am one of your hosts, Pierce Lydon, pronouns they, them, here with, as always,
Overtkill. It's me, Overtkill. No, it's George. You know me. Pronouns they, them, she, her.
Great. It took us an hour and a half just to get through the intro. What you're hearing now is a marvel of editing.
Listeners don't understand how long it's taken us to get to this. This has been a couple of weeks filled with technical difficulties. This is, I think, our third or fourth attempt to sit down and do this. Third? Well,
Definitely
third time's
third.
the charm.
Yeah, truly, we've found.
That's right. And we've been through hell and high water for you, Hellspawns. So I'm ready to dig into two of the spawns ever.
That is true. We're back to one of these episodes that it is definitely a couple of issues of Spawn. And
some
that's
interesting
okay.
things about them. We'll get into that. Before we do that, aside from technical difficulties, Pierce, how have things been for the last couple of weeks?
You know, pretty good. On Sunday I volunteered at a race. So in New York we have it's the MasterCard Mini 10K. Which is a bit of a confusing title because you'd think mini 10K, then what's the distance? Because usually 10Ks are not mini, and wouldn't that be a 5K or something lower than 10?
Yeah, well, it's not the Kessel Run.
Right.
You know what I mean?
You can't make it in 12 parsecs. But so it's like a women-focused event, right? So there's no dudes in the event.
So it's
They're
woke.
just like women and non-binary people. Yeah, it is woke. They've been doing it for like 53 years. It's kind of a big deal because like people don't realize this, but until like fairly recently, women did not run in like the Boston Marathon, the New York City Marathon. Like that is like recent history. The famous one is the woman in the Boston Marathon who was like, men tried to pull her off the course.
Yeah.
Like attacked her.
Which is wild.
Crazy. And that is within the last like 50 years. Anyway, the mini 10K, the mini 10K has been going on for 53 years now. And it is in celebration of the mini skirt. That is why it's the mini 10K. So it's a very fun, very cool vibes run. It was like 10,000 women. The woman who won ran it in like 30 minutes. But I was volunteering. I got to volunteer at one of the corrals, like one of the start corrals. And you know me, I'm a yapper. So I was just chatting people up respectfully, chatting about running and things. And it was really nice. It was just a great experience. Vanessa ran, so I saw her the end. And
that's awesome. That's what I feel like I sound like every time I say that.
But so I did that. And then also this past weekend, oh my God, I had such a crazy weekend. So Thursday, that I started with Sunday. I'll go backwards. So that was Thursday or Sunday. Saturday was pre-release for the new Final Fantasy Magic the Gathering set. I love Final Fantasy. So I was very excited. I pulled some really fun cards of some characters that I really like. I got my Cloud.
You should pitch something about that to my job.
Yeah, I should. So that was really fun. And then on Friday, I went to Blank Check Live, my favorite podcast, and they covered King Ralph. I went with my brother.
Wow.
Definitely one of the movies of all time.
What a film.
And then on Thursday, my brother and I, it's Tribeca Film Festival was last week, and it was the 30th anniversary of Casino. And so Marty and Bobby.
Oh, right,
yeah,
right.
Friends of the pod. Marty and Bobby showed up to introduce their movie, and then we watched most of Casino. We did leave. I mean, Casino is 3 hours long. The screening didn't start till like almost 9 p.m. and both of us were kind of like, "You hungry?" I was like, "I could eat." So we like watched.
Then Marty and Bobby were like, "Who the fuck are those people leaving?"
That is true. We are banned from the Tribeca Film Festival now. So anyway, how was your weekend? How's your life been?
Well, nothing like that. You know what? This weekend was Athens Pride. It was our little Pride parade, our very modest little parade. Surprising number of churches in the parade.
Really?
Yeah. You know, it's a thing down here. Church is a big part of people's lives, and I guess I appreciate the ones that are not horrible monsters towards queer people, making it known which of them are safe. You know what? I found a cool little booth at the little like fest kind of thing they had going on with a young queer artist. I bought all of their comics.
They you showed me
little zine comics. Cool. Yeah, I'll shout them out at the end of the episode. I'll give a double little recommendation there. But yeah, pretty cool. It was really fun to kind of just go out and be among, people like us, as the CD compilations used to be called. And yeah, it was fun. We left right before the rain started, so that was kind of perfect timing.
Was that like 2 hours through Casino?
Basically, I will say it rained out Pride so bad that like they had to cancel the rest of it, and I was kind of like, maybe God doesn't want us. Like maybe this is a sin.
To your point about there being so many like churches involved, I do kind of appreciate, I see them on TikTok all the time, like pastors and stuff who are like, hey, that's all made up, the anti-LGBTQ stuff, because, here's what the Bible says, and also here are translation errors, and here are and
all these logical things that many Christians won't pay attention to, but ones who are really conscientious should.
And you know what? We've talked about this 1,000 times on this podcast, but
I think our religious traumography episode just dropped.
That's gonna be the running theme of June episodes, I think. But I understand. I don't know. I don't think that I became a bad person because I learned like do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Know what I mean? I think the basic tenets are pretty good. And
there's a streak of people that say things like, well, without the threat of hell, how do you not go about murdering and raping as many people as you want?
That's so crazy, because I asked that person, you needed the threat of hell to not do that?
I say this. I do. I actually do go around murdering and harming as many people as I want, which is zero.
I like that too. Because we have free will.
Yes, I don't need the threat of hell. You know what I mean?
Speaking
the threat of my own conscience is good enough.
Speaking of somebody who needed the threat of hell, Jesus Christ. No.
The original Hellspawn.
Jesus Christ, the original Hellspawn. Honestly, if a book came out called The Original Hellspawn and Todd was like, oh yeah, so it's Jesus, people
That's how he came back.
Lose their minds.
I would love it.
If the reason that Jesus came back is because he made a deal with Malbolgia, holy
to be a Hellspawn
shit.
That's just sacrilegious enough for me.
It's kind of perfect. And then like the angels like save him, and that's why he ascends to heaven at the end.
Yeah. One of the only dudes to ever do this.
We're going to fix this.
Yeah.
And then when he comes back, he's like half Hellspawn, half angel.
I think Jesus in the Marvel universe is canonically a mutant. Santa Claus definitely is.
Santa Claus is a mutant. That's correct. Isn't like the one above all, isn't that like Stan
There's
Lee?
like 5 different ones that are like, oh, that's God.
But it's also like Stan Lee or Jack Kirby instead.
Yeah.
Depending on what character it is and who mostly
who
created
has to go
it.
There.
The one above all is like one of those guys.
Jesus of Nazareth. Let's see what it says here.
Speaking of devils,
it's all the same.
Speaking of devils in the Marvel universe, have you read Imperial?
Yes. What'd you think of it?
I think it's good because I'm on board for Hickman nonsense.
I really liked it. I wrote a thing about how much I liked it, actually. It reminds me of like Annihilation era, like Hickman's Fantastic Four era, where it just feels very conscientious about the details of continuity in a fun way. And it seems like it's more about the characters interacting than it is about like which characters got killed or whatever.
Yeah. It also feels like the funniest like bait and switch that we got the announcement of Imperial like out of, not the announcement necessarily, but like we got the like Charles Xavier's back, Lilandra's back, find out what they're up to. And then most of Imperial #1 is like, I can't use Sam and Bobby, so I'll just use Star-Lord and Nova.
I mean, it makes sense. It's cool.
Which is cool, which is great. Which that's the throwback to Annihilation era is like
exactly
if like OG Star-Lord getting like Abnett and Lanning getting their hands on him. They were buddies during the war, you know? Like, I don't know, it's cool.
It's fun.
I'm having a lot of fun with it.
Pretty fun comic.
I also think it's pretty gorgeous.
Oh, the art was fantastic. I think it would not have been as good without the artists working at that caliber. Hate to say I can't remember their names right now.
Iban Coelho.
It was Iban Coelho, and oh gosh, there was a second artist and I forgot who it was. I can find out.
I can look that up. But I also like too that the reality of events in the Marvel universe is that a lot of times they are a whodunit. Like somebody just has to
Federico Vicentini.
Yes, there we go. But I just do love like, hey, somebody's got to die. Okay, let's figure that out.
Hiro Kala will miss you.
Yeah. But there's a whole bunch of nonsense that I love in that book. Because
I loved Hulk coming back to Planet Hulk. That was really fun.
I like Amadeus Cho being the 5th or 6th smartest person on Earth.
I'm a big fan of Amadeus Cho.
Also, I love Deathbird showing up at the end, being like, "What the fuck?" Yeah. It's great. It's good stuff. Shout out to Jonathan Hickman for writing good comics.
There you go.
But you know what? Speaking of comics, it's time to
talk about
the comic that we are here to talk about.
Written by someone who we haven't read a Spawn comic by before.
This is true.
And you know what? You know how we're going to find out about that, Pierce? Because you're going to hit me. You're going to hit me with those credits.
All right. Well, we are covering Spawn number 105 and 106 today. Spawn 105. Todd McFarlane Image Comics present Retribution Overdrive Part 1.
Hell yeah. My favorite fucking Papa Roach album.
Plot by Steve Niles, Todd McFarlane. Story by Steve Niles. Pencils by Angel Medina. Inks by Danny Miki, Victor Olazaba, and Crime Lab Studios. Lettering by Tom Orzechowski. Colors by Brian Haberlin. Dan Kemp, Haberlin Studios. Cover by Greg Capullo and dedicated to Greg Capullo. It is a pretty cool cover.
Now, who is Greg Capullo that it's dedicated to?
You made it funny. So Steve Niles is a name that we've not heard yet in the Spawnie universe to date in this podcast.
Noted horror writer more than superheroes, really, though he's done some books that skirt the line. He is probably best known for writing 30 Days of Night.
Right.
Which was...
It feels like he always got the book after the book that people cared about a lot. The other thing was he was in Gray Matter and 3. They were on Discord Records, which was Fugazi's like label in DC. Oh, wow. So he is like an old school punk dude.
Didn't realize that.
Yeah, which is cool. Like pretty cool. But yeah, obviously he like loves like John Carpenter and George Romero, but it feels like he makes like 30 Days a Night. He works with Ben Templesmith. It won't be the first or last time that they work together. But there's a real John Carpenter-ness to this that I actually can kind of appreciate now that you say that. We'll talk about it a little bit. There's a vibe to this book that is interesting because it reminds me a little bit of the Coco Swiss.
The Coco Swiss.
Haven't done
yeah,
that in
it
a
kind
while.
of does, where it's sort of like someone being like, I guess I get what Spawn is.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
so I'm sort of going to write what that is. And I think it does move some of the plot forward a little bit. Something catches up on something that's been lingering for quite some time in Spawn's world. We'll get into it as we get into the plot. Right off the bat, 105, this first splash page is pretty cool. I think we're seeing Angel Medina really leaning into his own version of Spawn's face. It's kind of this weird, like caved in skull face.
Yeah,
in a
it's
way.
cool. It's like it's almost like he's got a black hole where his nose should be.
Yeah, and like the proportions are a little more like kind of Joe Madureira here a little bit.
Took the words right out of my mouth, my friend.
That's
I was
right.
just gonna say his big boot is almost like a hoof.
That's right. It sure is.
It's crazy.
Sure is.
It's cool.
And it takes a little while. I will say, I said right off the bat a minute ago. Right from the start, it takes a little interpretation to kind of get exactly what's going on visually here, because we have one of Spawn's hands flying off in the background behind the cape. His other one's up close, perched on a big lump that is, when you figure it out, it's almost a Rorschach that becomes a kind of gargoyle, like grotesque.
Yeah.
But in the background, there is a plane hurtling fiery through the sky towards the ground. Now, right through New York City.
Notably away from two towers.
Now, Pierce, what year did this come out?
This came out in February of 2001, which, as we all know, is the same year MCR
Just a matter
started.
Of months. That's right. Before Gerard Way was so taken aback by the sight of New York City.
Yeah, right, exactly. And working on Sheep in the Big City for Cartoon Network.
That's right.
One thing that's crazy about this page is if you squint, the plane looks like a web. This is a Spider-Man. This is a Spider-Man panel. Almost.
It could be, yeah.
You know what I mean?
It very much could be. The next two pages is a double page spread where the plane is hurtling into the ground and the engine is flying forward and it's just exploding.
It's pretty nuts. It is also exploding into water. Like it's exploding. Sully Sullenberger did not do his job this time around.
No, and this one's also partially on the dock. You can see it kind of behind the ships. Now this came out in February of 2001. I don't necessarily want to say that this scene is directly responsible for the formation of My Chemical Romance.
Gerard Way would also be working in a comic book, or no, this is after he worked in a comic book store. So although he did work in a comic book store when Spawn came out, so
you never know.
Gerard Way, come on the pod.
Actually, that'd be pretty sick. That'd be pretty cool.
We both met him, so
I used to know him pretty well.
Yeah. I shook his hand once because of you.
That's my one name drop ever. I never do that.
This plane explodes. We get our title page, and we've been having this. These two issues do have this like kind of narration, like voiceover narration. That is exactly what you were saying before. It's like a writer just being like, "Yeah, I guess I kind of get his deal," you know. And so it's this kind of like Batman-y kind of Frank, not quite Frank Miller-y narration going on.
It's a little more like creepy, I guess, in a way. I hate to pigeonhole Steve Niles on some level, but like he has got an ominous voice.
Yeah.
And that kind of comes through here.
Maybe even trying to do like a Rod Serling thing. Like I think that he's understanding that like, okay, what are the pieces of this? So there's the animated show. Todd does his kind of thing.
It very much has that kind of vibe. Now, there is a guy who has his camera who is taking pictures of the plane crash and all the people who have been pulled from the wreckage, and he happens to capture footage of what apparently is Spawn coming in and clearing people out of the wreckage and then just magically disappearing.
Now, is this the Spawn universe version of Marvel's? Like a little bit.
In a way,
he has like a Phil Urich vibe to him, but like if he was sleazy and in the Spawn universe,
right?
You know,
in a way, this guy will. He's not exactly a journalist. We'll find out more about him later. In the meantime, Spawn is slinking away. We're learning more about Spawn here through Steve Niles' eyes. He says he's the only one who sees the truth behind the lie. It took him a lifetime to realize it, but he is violence. He was born into rage, trained for murder, killed by greed, and reborn at evil's hand. I actually like that. It's a pretty good summation. If violence was a magnet, Spawn is pure seething iron. For him, there is no escape. And it's interesting that he uses the phrase, the only one who sees the truth behind a lie, because that was used on the young girl that we met in that Done in One, where Menon tricked her into giving up her soul.
Yeah, pretty much the same exact
turn of phrase. Yeah,
and that's where I wonder if like Todd's plotting is actually like guiding this more than we're giving him credit.
I'm sure that's a component of it. I'm sure Todd was like, now here's the things you need to know for a Spawn.
Yeah.
And he also, I'm sure Todd gave him some of the bits and pieces like what we're about to get into. Basically, the setup here, I don't think Steve Niles came to this very Spawn mythos heavy kind of two-parter on his own in that way.
Yeah.
There's these two guys unpacking a crate, and there's a guy who is very displeased with how long it's taking them. He says, "Careful, gentlemen, I've gone to great lengths to have these contents rebuilt. I've squandered away my fortunes for this moment. I will not be pleased if an inept mishap derails my plans. I've waited too long to fail now." And this figure is draped in black robes. He's got long, gnarly fingernails. He's kind of hiding in his penthouse, watching these screens with stacks of paper everywhere. It's a real Howard Hughes vibe to this, like the hermit recluse kind of pulling the strings in a way. And out from the crate pops who else but it's-a me, Overtkill.
Our friend, the Italian cyborg assassin, Overtkill, who we haven't seen since issue 20, which is the issue 20 of Spawn. So it's been 86 issues. However, in 1998, we did see Overtkill be built by his brother in Curse of Spawn 23 and 24. Now, we did not cover those comics, and we're not going to cover those comics, but we're going to cover them a little bit here. And basically all it is that the pieces of Overtkill get shipped back to like a scientist, and we find out the scientist is his brother, and he rebuilds him. They're not very good issues, in my opinion. They mostly serve to get this piece back on the board in some way.
And you don't really need it to read this comic.
You really don't, because it's superhero comics and people come back all the time. And
we just got the explanation. This guy spent all his fortunes having him rebuilt.
Exactly. Done. And I will say this, the Blake Whitlow reading order does slot those issues in because the timeline is unclear, because Overtkill was destroyed by Spawn initially in those in the earlier issues and comes back in 20. And we don't really know where he comes from. So Blake even says in the reading order, it's like, well, they could go here before he gets rebuilt the first time, before he comes back, or closer to when they were actually published. They could actually take place more around like Spawn 78 to 86.
Sure.
It doesn't matter that much. All that matters is that Overtkill is here now. He's upgraded. He's a lot more more cyborg. Yeah, he's a lot more robotic, a lot less man. And
his the man parts are looking rough.
He's like a zombie at this point. Yeah,
like a zombie cyborg reanimated. Love this first splash page of him busting out of the crate. He looks awesome. This is where Angel Medina's kind of proportions and skewed sort of very stylized anatomy really comes in handy and really looks great. His face looks awesome. When I was a kid, I would have been trying to copy how this looks. I just love the stylized posing, the crud coming out of his mouth as he's alive, I live again.
Yeah, it's great.
Love
And
it.
then Medina really leans into what we're used to from. It's going to be, listeners, it's going to be a few more issues of Angel Medina before we stop comparing him to Greg Capullo. But especially since this is dedicated to Capullo, he definitely. Sorry.
Oh no, you go ahead. You finish your thought.
I was just going to say, like, he definitely is trying to add some of the flavor of Capullo's like layouts to the work that's getting done here, because the plot really just Overtkill blows these guys away. Okay, what's the most interesting way I can make that look?
Right.
So we get the kind of sketchy bordered panels, non-traditional panel border, like non-traditional panel layout, where it kind of like fans down the page rather than just being squares. I think it works.
I think it works okay. I will say here is where the seams start to really kind of come apart for me a little bit with Angel Medina's in these issues. There are some pages throughout this story. In fact, I will say there are solid chunks of these two issues where if they had no script, I fucking dare you to tell me what's happening. Now, I don't hate that necessarily.
Yeah.
Some of it's abstract. Some of it's just like, I can't actually tell what I'm really supposed to be looking at here.
Mm-hmm.
I still don't hate it. I'm not saying that in a critical, like, I didn't like reading this way. I actually kind of like that sometimes. Like, I if I have to pick between being very highly stylized and having very straightforward and clear storytelling, I will choose the latter. Basically every time. But if that's not what's on the page, sometimes I still enjoy the kind of, chaos that's there.
Yeah.
And these are some very chaotic pages. Case in point, this fight, there's a good 50% of it where it's like, okay, that's a guy's leg. I can see his arms. And in some ways, the coloring isn't helping either. Like, okay, if you look at the third panel on that page of the 5, like, fanning panels.
Our favorite color is back.
It's just a blob of gray. There's no definition given to the figure by the colors. And that is a bit of an issue to me, because this would be a lot more legible if there was even just a little bit of difference between like his skin tone and his clothing.
The other thing is the inking. There's not enough black on the page to give you
it's very brittle,
a real foundation. And it is extremely, the line work is crazy. There's so many lines, and the more lines are not communicating to us more, they're actually making it harder to communicate.
And like I said, so I like some of those lines. I think they're kind of like, I like the style of them, but you're exactly right. And I feel like in a way, this really reminds me a lot of like Scott Collins, some of like his art on like Flash, or like, especially his Avengers run that he did, who will
Brett
do
Booth,
Spawn later on.
Is a Spawn artist now, but earlier Brett Booth, I would say his clarity of line is incredible compared to where it was, I would say, even 15 years ago.
Oh yeah, and artists, grow and change, and styles grow and change, and artists follow that in a lot of ways.
I think it's also a team up of inkers as well. We're seeing Olazaba more and more as these kind of issues have gone on, less just Danny Miki. We're also seeing Crime Lab Studios, which means it's a bit of a team effort here.
Right.
So we're not getting a consistent inker across all these pages.
Some of them have a very manga kind of feel. Some of them have a much more Western feel. Contrast that page to the one next to it with inks, for example, the big close-up of Overtkill's face. So cool. That fucking rules so hard. So I would wear that on a shirt today. That's the one we took our little quote from, and it looks awesome. Like the kind of the way he handles his like zombie-esque face with the cyborg bits on it. It's kind of very Deathlock to me.
Yep.
Like this is the stuff of dreams to me. I love this kind of art. Just zombie cyborg robot monsters. If you've seen my art over the years, I've drawn a bunch of these guys, just weirdos with tubes and like red robot faces, and looks great. I love that. There's also a lot of black on this page. There's a lot of room for the detail in his face to breathe, and for us to really get a handle on every single, every single detail and every single bit of anatomy and robotics.
And I think similarly, though, there's not a lot of action on the page. And so that's what we're seeing Angel Medina and the inking team struggle with at this juncture, is that some of the action they're not great with. But when things are a little bit more static, there's a lot more clarity. They're able to kind of like communicate what we're supposed to be seeing a lot easier. And that's going to change over time, and they're going to get better at it. So I'm not really too concerned. The acting actually across this issue is really, really funny. So in that scene where we get to see Overtkill's big zombie head, there's a knock at the window of the shadowy man, and he's like basically like he's giving him a message, and we get the understanding that there's going to be that Overtkill is here. He's got a mission. The mission will be fulfilled. That's basically it.
You can kind of guess at this point that he wants him to kill Spawn, because he's talking about he doesn't haunt the alleys anymore. And we'll find out very soon who this shadowy man is and why he wants to kill Spawn. And if you have even an inkling of a guess, it's probably the right one.
If you've read one Spawn comic,
you can probably guess who this might be.
Yeah. We're going to cut back to the photographer from earlier.
I love this page. These two pages work great to me. First off, I love the phone conversation between the guy and the kind of sleazy guy and the sleazy reporter, the tabloid reporter.
Yeah,
he has his camcorder and he's trying to sell the footage. I love this guy. This character to me looks like a Masamune Shiro character from like Dominion Tank Police, or like the actual Ghost in the Shell manga or something like that. Like very 80s anime kind of exaggerated features. Love this character. And I love, honestly, the acting between both the photographer and the tabloid journalist who's trying to sell the footage to. I really like, I mean, again, it's stylized, and here the inking is, again, in some places very brittle, but there's enough contrast between the two settings and enough acting on the characters that it's really engaging and charming, and the like anatomy exaggeration really works for me.
There's also a really smart thing, like they're on the phone, and if you're new to comics reading, a thing that I hear from like folks that just want to read a comic, or like, oh, I heard this graphic novel is good, but then they try to read it and they're like, I don't know where the panels are supposed to go.
Yeah.
When visual storytelling is not good, we get those little arrows that are like, read that next.
Yeah.
This is really fun because there's like a jagged line through the panels in the middle that
like,
kind of lead your eye in a way.
Well, the panels are also set side by side and staggered, so it's very clear, like a back and forth. It's using visual storytelling rules that are very familiar, which shows that Angel Medina is perfectly capable of that. Like, this is a great page. I love this page. One of my favorite pages in the comic.
One of my favorite pages in the comic is the next page.
I was going to say, love the next page too, which is a series of panels of Spawn kind of lurking on a rooftop, looking very kind of bestial and animal. His hand looks very much just like talons draped over the side of the building he's perched on. And it's three increasingly close views of Spawn, and then this image of him clutching his head as he has this vision. So, okay, on the previous page, just to round out what happened in the story, the guy makes a deal to sell the footage to the tabloid for $2,000, and they're going to meet up at this place called the Black Cat Cafe. So next page is Spawn. He is lurking on this rooftop, and suddenly he has this burst of, it says agony. It says at first it's just a hum, almost soothing in its tone and rhythm, but slowly it begins to rise like the sound of a distant drill cutting into teeth, and then agony. It is the instinct of a soldier and the damned. And so Spawn has this burst of what we can assume is a psychic vision of what look to be people in pain. It's hard to tell exactly what's going on, but it's meant to communicate more of a feeling than like an actual clear vision.
Exactly. And also this is us understanding his power that he's sort of gained over the last, 25 issues or so,
where he is in touch with like the darkness and the bad things that happen. And he leaps off the roof. It says, it is the instinct of a soldier and the damned. Find the source of the agony, snuff it, stop the pain. Now, here's a page where it took me, if you didn't have, and there's very little script, if you didn't have the following pages literally laying out what happened here.
It looks like Spawn murdered all these people.
It looks like Spawn just showed up and murdered a bunch of people. It's just Spawn showing up with all these bodies on the ground, presumably at the Black Cat Cafe. Now, I love the one big boot panel here where he's kind of like lurking in the shadows. I love the cartooning again. But again, like you said, if there wasn't more actual literal text coming that explains this, it's hard to know exactly what happened.
Yeah. But one of the fun things on that page, though, is the last two panels where there's like nothing behind Spawn, and then we see a figure with the
trench coat
with the classic disguise.
Yes, like a Ben Grimm or like Raphael style, like trench coat and fedora.
And it doesn't make any sense.
Probably almost nearly every one of us who has wanted to be those characters has worn that to some function at some time or another.
Guilty as charged.
When I was young.
Yep. Freshman year of college.
Yeah.
I had a big trench coat like that. It's obviously Overtkill, and he just blows Spawn away. This stuff's kind of fun. Spawn's caught off guard, and so he's not, beating the shit out of Overtkill just yet.
Now, this top panel of the page where Spawn says, you fell for, or where Overtkill says, you fell for it. I think I like this new body. Now, I want to point out how much of a missed opportunity that whole panel is, because really look closely at that. What's happening is Overtkill's human arms are growing out and growing into robot cyborg arms, like enveloping his body.
Pretty cool.
You have to really dig deep into that panel to be able to tell that, because again, the whole dude and all of Overtkill and all the stuff around him is just a gray blob. And the lines are so brittle that it's hard to tell exactly what you're seeing. And it winds up being awesome because Overtkill turns his arms into guns and blows Spawn away. The panel below that of Spawn getting blasted to bits with like the goo flying out of him.
Necroplasm everywhere.
Cool. It's awesome. It's great. And Overtkill is stepping in the blood. He says, at last, first blood. How does it feel to be on the receiving end? I can't believe I'm getting paid for this. And Spawn says, paid. And then we see Spawn's goo. Now, here is another moment of missed storytelling opportunity to me in a way. Because these last two panels on this page, what we're seeing is Spawn's necroplasm, not just pulling Spawn back together, but seeping up into Overtkill's body.
New thing, never seen that before. It's too subtle.
It's such a cool thing, and it's a cool power. We've seen it kind of happen with like the green and stuff like that, but this is a little different, and it's like barely sold, because the next page, I would argue that the next two pages, which are a double page spread of Spawn blasting Overtkill, that is pretty cool, but kind of hard to read because of where the crease in the page is.
Yeah. Not ideal. It's actually,
it would have been better to use one page showing Spawn taking him over and the next page of Spawn pulling out his guns and blasting him.
Feels like a good opportunity to turn it.
Maybe so. Yeah. So Overtkill's saying, what are you doing? I can't control my arms. We assume that this is because of the necroplasm seeping in. And then Spawn, again, suddenly has a huge wad of guns. Oh, actually, I see what it is. He turns Overtkill's guns against him.
Yeah.
The art is so unclear here that it almost looks like Spawn is holding a gun and pointing it at him. But no.
Yeah. But that said, Spawn does look cool.
Yes, the Spawn does look cool. Overtkill getting blasted by his own guns looks pretty cool. It's just a little hard to read. I wish it was more legible.
And that kind of goes for the next page as well. This whole fight has gotten the attention of local authorities.
More black on the page, but it's
not enough.
It's covered in gray smoke.
Yeah, the smoke, like basically Spawn is using his chains and ripping Overtkill apart, and he's even using his like blades against him. and it's not super clear what's going on at any given moment. Even in the very last panel, it seems like Overtkill's maybe getting the upper hand. There's not a ton of dialogue either, besides Spawn yelling, "Tell me who sent you,"
and Overkill saying "never," and then getting just shredded. Which, again, there are bits of this that are pretty cool and legible, and I like the concept. There is a version of this with stronger visual storytelling that I wish existed.
Agreed. The next page, though, is great.
We love this page.
Yeah,
this is kind of, we haven't done a deep dive into the arts in the storytelling in this way in a while, and I'm kind of enjoying it. It's kind of fun. Well, and I will say this for Angel Medina, whether it's working as well as I think he wants it to or not, his art is giving us a lot to talk about and a lot to dig into that is actually very interesting. And it is not boring. It doesn't look it's not non-compelling.
We said that these issues go, and it's partly because the art just kind of goes. Like, the art's like, yep, all right, we're going to get on to the next thing. It doesn't really linger when it doesn't need to. It's not necessarily clear all the time, but when it is really great, it is really great. And even when it's not super clear, it's still pretty good.
Now, I will say, this page, okay, so what happens on this next page is the little weirdo guy who, you know who he looks like? You know who it is? It's Curtis Armstrong, who played Booger from Revenge of the Nerds. It's like the anime version.
Yeah, it does kind of look like that.
With like his glasses all taped together. Anyway, he's sitting there watching
like Joe
TV.
Pantoliano would play him.
He is eating a box of Aunt Jabroni pancake mix, which he's just eating the mix. That's crazy work. That's really something. And he's drinking.
Also, Aunt Jabroni?
Aunt Jabroni. Instead of Aunt Jemima, I guess. But she makes the syrup.
I guess that's the joke, is that Aunt Jabroni makes the pancake mix. And Aunt Jemima makes
Aunt Jemima and Aunt Jabroni were really close friends for most of their lives. So close they even shared a bed. Can you believe it?
Gals being pals.
That's right. Sappho and her friend.
Canon. Happy Pride.
Happy Pride. My favorite sin. Well, one of them. I think I said that in one of the other episodes too. That's funny.
You did.
Good. I've said it a lot. It's a joke.
Good callback.
It's a joke. I've been having a lot of shtick lately in my life. Just trying to
brag more.
Yeah. He's watching on TV his own tape.
Is he watching
his own tape? I think, because you can see that Spawn's cape in the smoke. Now, I thought he was watching the fight too, which would have made him a crazy person, because he said to meet him at that cafe.
Yeah. See, this is also where some of this,
now he
storytelling itself, it doesn't lend itself to it. It ends with Smoke and Spawn's cape on the previous page. It starts with Smoke and Spawn's cape in the first panel of the next page. You know what I mean? Like, it feels like a continuation.
It could be either one. I interpreted it as him watching his own tape. And the reason I thought that is, if he saw that there was a massacre going on at the place that he said to meet him, he probably would have something he would likely make some connection. Now,
you're right, because of what we're getting to in this page. So
yes. Now, what happens is, was a knock at the door, and he goes, "Speak of the devil," and grabs the tape. That's him. That's the freak who's going to make me rich. Oh, wait, no. Oh my God, Pierce. Okay, we need to go back. You were right.
We have to go back.
He is watching Spawn
He's holding
fight Overtkill.
The tape.
He's holding the tape. Well, there's a sequence here of him springing up towards the door. There's like a double action in that panel. And I thought it was him grabbing the tape. Now, and I was reading it backwards. I was reading it, "Speak of the devil." That's him. That's the freak who's going to make me rich. I thought it was just, no. He's watching Spawn fight Overkill on TV and thinking, that's him. That's the freak who's going to make me rich. Not the thoughts of a smart person. Also, not the thought of a smart person is when the knock on the door comes, thinking, "Speak of the devil," instead of thinking, "I said meet me at the Black Cat Cafe," not "come to my address," and gave them my address.
Yeah.
So he opens the door. We get this great panel of him smiling, and then suddenly him grimacing with a bullet hole in his forehead. That is just a very effective 2 panels And we see the guy's assistant, the mysterious guy who hired Overtkill. We see his assistant grabbing the tape and retreating. We cut back to Spawn and Overtkill. The police have now surrounded the place.
But they've lost all their shotguns.
That's right.
George,
There's smoke everywhere.
Where could their shotguns have gone?
Now, okay, so there's smoke everywhere. They're all like, where's my shotgun? Overtkill's going, come out and fight, you freaking ghoul, which you're one to talk, man. True. He says, come out and die at the hands of the new Overtkill. I don't think that's going to happen. Spawn pops out, and he has got a super shotgun that is like literally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
I love that it's
like 12 shotguns.
They're like chained together. It fucking rules.
Yes, and it clearly is that he has chained all these shotguns together so that he can like pull all the triggers with one chain. And he's just holding it with one hand, and he goes, I said, who sent you? And he says, screw you. He blasts him. At this point, Overtkill just picks up, or Spawn just picks up Overtkill's head, his steaming head with his one cyborg eye, and Spawn saying, who sent you? And he said, screw you. And Spawn just says, tell me, and punctures his eyeball. There's the cops outside waiting in the smoke, and one of them says, well, Mother Mary, what is that sound? The guy says, I don't know. And Overtkill's mangled head comes crashing into the cop car's windshield. This drawing of Overtkill upside down with his eyeball coming out through his fucking mouth. This is so sick. It's so awesome. And the cops looking back at it like, what the fuck? Dude, that is so fucking killer. Like, I'm loving some parts of what Angel Medina is doing with this. I'm honestly loving his Overtkill.
Agreed. I think that he is having a lot of fun where he's able to have fun. It just does feel like there are times when what he's doing, I don't know. We already know this, but like inking by committee is usually never a great sign.
It's tough.
Same as penciling by committee. Obviously, comic book art is always done in ways where it gets passed through a few hands.
Each step is usually done by 1 to 2 people.
Right. And the more people's hands it passes through, the less consistency that you get. And it's unlike, I think, when Chance Wolfe and Todd McFarlane and Danny Miki were inking and kind of taking turns, where we were able to really pick things up in terms of their styles.
Yeah.
I don't think that there's a huge... I'm not able to pull Danny Miki out of this, even though I've looked at his art the most of these. Although I've looked at a lot of Victor Elzaba in my life, but not on this book. And then all the Crime Lab guys. There's like some stuff where I'm like, wow, that stuff was stellar. And then I chalk it mostly up to the inking, because it does feel like there's stuff that Angel Medina was like, oh, well, that'll get blacked out.
The inking of the next issue is a little more consistent to me.
Agreed.
And on that note, let's get into Spawn 106. Hit me with those credits.
Hell yeah. That's going to be Todd McFarlane and Image Comics present Retribution Overdrive Part 2.
It actually sounds like a Metallica album.
It sounds like a good Metallica album.
Sure. Do those exist?
Yeah. What are you talking about? The first 3 Metallica albums are good.
Yeah.
Get out of here. This is crazy.
You know what?
You know what? Let's call it. That's it. We got I'm not even that big a Metallica fan, but like, come on.
I'm not saying they're bad. I'm just
Saint Anger. That's a great
Saint Anger with the Earth Crisis snare.
That was their first record, right?
It's actually a Slipknot snare, really. Whack, 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 whack.
I just remember that song being on Fuse all the time.
You know what? I will say, huge respect to Cliff Burton. Fucking phenomenal bassist.
Yeah. Retribution Overdrive Part 2. Plot by Steve Niles, Todd McFarlane. Story by Steve Niles. Pencils by Angel Medina. Inks, it's getting worse. Danny Miki, Victor Elzaba, Alan Martinez, Crime Lab Studios. Lettering by Tom Warzikowski. Colors by Brian Haberlin, Dan Kemp, and Haberlin Studios. Cover by Greg Capullo. Dedicated to those who frequent the Spawn.com message boards.
Wow, they got a
So,
collective shout out. I thought you were going to say
yeah.
those who lost their lives in the formation of MCR.
Still hasn't happened yet. It's only March.
Well, they're planning. We saw that other issue.
Yeah. So this does open with the United Nations building. So east
no,
side.
it's not. It's
What?
SCA headquarters.
I mean,
according to what this says. I mean, it kind of looks like the United Nations building.
It is the United Nations building. SCA headquarters a half mile below it. That's the United Nations building. I live here.
Is it?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. I misread that. I didn't realize it said a half mile below. Here's why. Because Spawn's not going below.
He's going in the window.
Spawn's going in a window, and the guy isn't below.
No, he's not. Seemingly, he's not. Yeah, Spawn's cape is going in the window of the United Nations building, even
way high up.
Even though that's not where the SCA headquarters is. Yeah, it's fine. So
I've got some storytelling issues with this climax that we'll get into here, and we'll figure it out. Right off the bat, I think there's a maybe let's call it a translation issue with the script and how it's meant to be perceived.
Yeah, I agree. I like this like first couple of bits here. So there's a quick meeting and a couple of phone calls to the police and newspaper will ensure the story remains a confusing rumor. They're talking about the fight between Overtkill and Spawn. Now General Franklin Martyr thinks he can get some sleep. If he's lucky, he'll live to see morning. And Spawn shows up and he's menacing this general, which hell yeah, that's what you should do. Yeah. I like Angel Medina's Spawn here. We're getting a little Chance Wolf style inking.
Yeah, and, I kind of dig it.
The blinds are really cool. And he is trying to figure out, Spawn is trying to figure out like who paid Overtkill, who sent him, what's going on. And he's doing the Batman thing of just like running around and yelling like, who sent you?
Yeah, and they're kind of telling him, this guy's like, if I knew I'd tell you, he's a wanted man. And Spawn leaves this guy. You can see that there's like maggots pouring out of Spawn as he like looks at the fucking guy's pictures. It's very weird.
That's cool.
Spawn sneaks up on another guy, and the guy's like, how did you find me? And the guy says, a little head told me, which not a fucking good line.
I mean, it is what happened, I suppose.
But it's not a good line.
That's true.
He says it like everyone's going to be like, oh, wow, a little head. Yeah, I get it. It's not good. I'm sorry. Sorry, Steve. Sorry, Steve.
We cut back to that kind of those clawed fingers, and a voice says, quicker than I expected, but he still comes, following the trail like a lamb to the slaughter.
The assistant is telling this guy he's taking care of his loose ends. He says, as you asked, sir, you'll find the crash tape with your tickets and papers. After the blast, he'll be revealed and hunted for the remainder of his days. Knowing that it was me will drive him to the brink of madness. To burn again will push him over the edge. I toyed with him. The world will consume him. There's no room for the miscreant, dead thing among the living. The guy says, it's an inspired plan, sir. And
it's not, says, though, is the problem.
Not. And here's why it's bad. Because that guy was just watching Spawn fight Overtkill on TV.
Yeah. Nobody needs the tape. Nobody needs, like, you don't have to put like an APB out for Hellspawn.
It's already out there.
Also, he's so strong now. Like, he's so strong. I think even as a reader, you kind of have to, it's hard to suspend disbelief a little bit because you're already on board with the general concept. I do think that the finale of this issue drives that point home, though, and we'll get there. So we're going to put a pin in what I mean.
I mean, he dismantled Overtkill quickly, and I think
which I think is kind of the point.
I think that's appropriate given that his last fight was against Malbolgia, and he and Angela killed Malbolgia. Yeah. Like, that's what a hard fight is for Spawn now. Undead Cyborg is nothing.
Yeah, agreed. And similarly, this character, who, if you haven't figured out who it is yet, you'll get more of his profile on this next
and he
page.
is
Actually,
definitely, he's grown out his beard. He's got long
wispy
hair.
hair.
It's very much a Howard Hughes thing. Like, if for those who don't know what I'm talking about, the TLDR, Howard Hughes was a billionaire or millionaire, like one of the richest people in the world in the early 20th century. In his later life, he became a recluse and lived in a series of hotel rooms that he basically never left. He had, when they found him in his last hotel room, he had like jars of all of his like urine and feces and fingernails and everything.
When did he start Playboy, though?
Oh, that was actually a different guy.
Oh, well,
that was Hugh Hefner.
I was right there.
You almost had it.
Howard Hughes, Hugh Hefner. They have basically the same name.
They're both basically Stan Lee.
Yeah. Spawn's interrogations are leading him to different characters. You know, our shadowy figure, his butler's like, fucking, this guy's a lunatic. This is what I mean, that I think the plan is meant to be a little bit stupid. We cut to the next place that Spawn has gone. I really like this narration. He is called by the dead, tragic whispers in the back of his mind. That to me says that like Spawn's honing in on that ability a little bit, you know, like he's understanding how it works a little bit more.
And so the tabloid reporter is showing up and she says, I'm here, a tape. He said he had a tape. The guy said, and Spawn says, of what? And she says, something strange, something big with a red cape and chains. It was you, wasn't it? Now, again, he didn't tell her to come to his house.
Yeah,
he told her to meet her at the Black Cat, where I think that was a massacre by Overtkill. Yeah. Now, this whole thing is getting jumbled up. Now, Spawn finds the guy's body. He does a cool thing where he uses his powers to pull the bullet out of his skull. Yeah, kind of like cool. Magical Batman shit, you know? I like the whole sequence here. I really like the inking on Spawn's spikes. Just really jagged and like kind of desiccated.
I like the narration again. Murder has a taste. Each death a distinguishing history. Just follow the trail of sorrow and the story unfolds. This is where the story should have started.
Yeah. And he says, who else knew about the deal? And she says, nobody, just my cameraman. And Spawn leaves. She says, okay, I'll stay here. And Spawn says it's a pattern this Hellspawn knows well. He crashes into this van and he says, you sold out your partner's informant. Who paid you? Spawn causes a huge car accident. I love the splash panel of Spawn like crashing down into the Black Cat, where I guess I'm not clear on how this relates. Maybe the Black Cat is where the guy lives, like he lives above it or something.
Maybe
it's that, and it's just not communicated well.
This is, all this gets a little bit fuzzy. It's not the best.
Spawn finds out who paid the guy. We don't yet exactly, but it says it's all like dominoes. One event falls into the next, tumbling towards its last act. And Spawn kicks the guy's car out. He bursts out of the roof of the car with his chains. It's kind of a cool panel. The guy flipping over his, what is that, an Audi?
Yeah. I don't know cars. I can't drive. The thing that's weird here is that he says like, oh, I want to give you something back, while he's like, you know, mean mugging this guy really up in his face.
It's an Audi.
Oh, okay. And he shows him the bullet and then, you know, presumably kills him with it. The storytelling here is like, it's all real fuzzy. Like, if you are not tracking this book, you're not realizing that the guy that he's menacing is the butler or whatever, like the assistant to the guy, because you don't ever see him really. You just kind of have to assume because he was the guy that shot the other guy.
And then that assistant got the whereabouts of Spawn from the cameraman's assistant, the tabloid reporter's assistant. It's all a jumbled mess. What happens next is Spawn shows up at finally, I guess, the next address. It says, when it all began, this Hellspawn would never have done this, but this is no longer the beginning. This Hellspawn killed his master. This Hellspawn took his destiny by the balls and squeezed. Acceptance of his state has brought new understanding. It's not good what he is, but it's not as bad as he once thought. Now he just is, and heaven help those who cross him. For now he knows that he is a force, an entity like no other. He cannot be stopped. He cannot be harnessed. I love this Spawn marching through. Like the proportions are all fucking crazy. That's like a X-Force-esque Spawn, but I kind of love it.
Yeah, it's cool. I like it.
It says, he had but one weakness, his limitation, his mind, his tortured memory. It's been locked away deep where it no longer impedes his progress. I don't get what Spawn's looking at here.
I have no idea.
There's a guy being immolated. There's a guy being immolated.
Is it him?
I don't know.
Is this them trying to get the death of... So what I think it is him watching his own death.
You're right. He's watching it on screens. That is exactly what it is.
Because I think that they're trying to, one, remove Chapel from the origin.
Right.
And put it closer to the movie.
If you look down at the bottom, very bottom left, you can see Spawn watching it on the view screen in a fuller picture. It's just hard to tell exactly what it is.
It's partly because the view screen's like a weird fucking circle.
It is very weird.
It's very weird.
It says Al Simmons is dead. Now there is only Spawn. There are no limits. I love that part. Yeah. So the man in the shadows will rise from the ashes and claim his place in the world. Many will die. Simmons will be blamed. Every drop of blood, every shattered limb, every life lost will be glorious. And then the next page reveals who it is. Spawn turns the guy around and says, "Hello, Jason. Long time." And it is Jason Wynn looking like an old hermit. And I actually love this page. I love the way he draws Jason Wynn's fear. Again, it's a very manga-esque face. I really, really, really like it. I love this.
There's
page.
Also like a lot of good motion. Like the beard and the hair gives him like a lot of good motion.
He's whirling around. Spawn's hand like crunched up in a fist.
Doing the Arthur meme.
Yeah, exactly.
Arthur meme Spawn.
And I love the panel at the top of the next page where Spawn's kind of standing there with his cloak flowing around him, his hands all clutched out. I just love the rendering there. I love how it's centered between the stacks of papers. Jason Wynn says his place is wired to blow any second. Spawn says, "You forget who I used to be. You can fool me once, Jason, not twice." And he shows him the bomb.
Yeah. Or I think it's the detonator. It's not the whole bomb, right? It's just
I don't know. It's all, the wires are all ripped out.
Yeah.
So Jason says, "So what now? More threats? Another ultimatum? I've heard it all from you before, Simmons. Poor you. Poor Al and Wanda. Just turn around and leave. Get out. I'll deal with you another time, another way. I'll expose you to the world. That's what you're afraid of, isn't it? Living among the living." Great line. Mm-hmm. What would they do if they knew a creature like you walked in their midst? They would hunt you down. They would torment you. Now, again, this is all irrelevant because it was all just on fucking TV.
Yeah.
He says, "Well, say something, you pathetic grunt, you ridiculous freak. Say something, pawn." He says, "Is this where you tell me you'll be back? You'll be watching me? Put me down in this instant, Simmons. That's an order. I'm your superior. Put me down." And Spawn says, "This is for Al." This whole page is so fucking great. Jason Wynn cowering on the floor, Spawn grimacing down at him, Jason being ripped out of his robe, like just fully exposed to the world in his little socks. Spawn holding him up. I love that panel of Spawn holding him up saying, "This is for Al." And it says, "Violence is too easy. He expects that, but a scar on the mind can last forever." And it goes full Hellraiser.
Yeah.
This is the best double page spread in the whole two-parter. Spawn reared back, muscles rippling, cape flowing everywhere, ripping Jason Wynn's skin off in one fucking go. So killer.
It's so cool.
It's so Hellraiser.
What I love about it, though, too, I mean, listen, this is just fucking great. But what I love about it is the next page.
The next page.
And he's like, so Jason Wynn's naked and stammering, his skin gone. And it says, "After all these years, the Hellspawn still learns new things about his powers, both physical and mental." And then it's the same panel, but he's got his skin back, and you realize that he didn't do anything to him.
He just made him
think that he did it.
Just warped his mind. He says, this is better than killing him. This is permanent agony, permanent and absolute loss of power.
And a completely insane panel of
that
Jason
panel
with
looks
no
like
skin.
the Hall of the Crimson King, the Court of the Crimson King. Like straight up looks like the Court of the, you know, the album by King Crimson and the Court of the Crimson Crimson. Yeah. Fuck yeah. Anyway.
So it says, it's all in your mind. Open your eyes, Jason. Just a
that
little
panel
gift.
of Spawn where he says, open your eyes, Jason.
Yeah, it's cool.
It's
this is where the inking's actually really good. And you want to know what the difference is? There's a lot more black on the page.
Yep.
Like, come on, everybody. Like,
those details actually add definition when they're against a background that has a lot more chunky blacks in it.
We got to go back in time, George. We got to tell them.
More black on the page. The last page says, Wynn was right. He's being wheeled away by people. He's screaming, raving mad, stark raving mad. He's being wheeled away by hospital workers. It says, Wynn was right. He has feared the world. He fears being known, being seen, despised, hated, and hunted. From this day on, it changes. No more hiding. The Hellspawn welcomes the world. He dares it. Bring it on. And we see the tabloid reporter kind of looking out the window, finding with the tape that she's found. Yeah. Now, that's interesting to me. I don't know how that's going to play out. Haven't read ahead. I usually don't. I kind of go episode to episode, so I'm kind of getting it with y'all. I think that's a fun perspective. I think it's interesting because when we talked to Todd McFarlane, one of the things he was talking about was how that's actually been a new development now in the Spawn universe, is that the people that people now know that beings like Spawn and his ilk and these other superheroes and like monsters and you know, kind of characters all exist in this world around them now. That's become public knowledge. So how that affects that's hundreds of issues later than this.
Mm-hmm.
So how we get from this to that and what that means in between, I'm excited to find out.
This very much feels like saying goodbye to the previous era of Spawn.
Yeah.
It is a little awkward in its execution of it because it is having to make peace with some of the things that did happen in that first 100 issues, right? The beginning. Remember, like, coming right out of the gate and it's like, oh, look, there's a reference to Savage Dragon, and oh, Chapel killed him, and oh, Youngblood showed up, and oh, right. We did this, and like, and then
it's kind of re-expanding Spawn's world after a bit of a contraction away from the Image stuff.
Yeah, they had to like put some stuff back in the bottle or just like pivot it a little bit. One of the things that Todd, it's the thing that, as I've talked to people a lot about that interview, one of the things that he said is that he didn't get a lot of Dr. Dooms in early.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting.
And Jason Wynn is not a threat to this Spawn. And I like that Jason Wynn has this like ridiculous plan. That
it's so roundabout.
It's just kind of like what it is. It is almost like when a Silver Age villain shows up, like, but still in Silver Age mode, and they haven't like evolved, and they show up, and like the characters are like, oh boy, the armadillo, we're doing this again.
You know? I actually loved this though, as like Jason, that as an evolution of Jason Wynn, like fully unmoored, and even the people that work for him are like, this is a terrible plan.
Yeah, but
I'm
that's
just cashing the checks.
But I think that it speaks to Todd and not Brian Holguin at this point, Steve Niles, but I think it speaks to Todd being like, all right, we got to move past this guy because he's not a big enough bad. And Malbolgia's also gone. So we got to push this guy into like a new era. I do think, and we're about to embark on the Summer of Hellspawn, where we cover all of Hellspawn. We're going to see Steve Niles again with Ben Temple-Smith on art, with his frequent collaborator. So that's going to be really cool towards the back half of that book. But it is going to be a lot of Brian Michael Bendis and Ashley Wood at the front half. What we're going to see is we're going to see a push towards a more mature version of the character that exists that we've seen before. We've seen the David Fincher Seven style, like, oh, I want to be edgy, I want to do this like kind of thing. How do I make the R-rated Spawn? Hellspawn is much more of that.
Yeah.
I would say sometimes it's like a cringy PG-13, but sometimes
I mean, but that's part of the fun of comics. What
totally
comic isn't a cringy PG-13 at times?
But I think that in terms of pushing it forward, you do have to put away like Overtkill. You'd probably have to put away a version of Jason Wynn.
Well, and that's the thing about this is it makes me feel like this is maybe not the end of Jason Wynn. I don't know what's coming again. Maybe it is the end of Jason Wynn, but it feels like this is the kind of thing where like, okay, you can have Jason Wynn come back from this as a much scarier villain.
Correct. You can have him come back. You can have him evolve now because we left him post becoming the Redeemer. He was not.
Clown is gone. He kind of forgot about everything that was going on with Jason Wynn. Like
he's not really fucked with him in a while.
He just is like, oh wait, what? Yeah. Keep fucking with Spawn.
Speaking of, we'll get to Clown next episode.
Hell yeah.
Because the first arc of the first 2 issues feature the return of Clown. So that's the thing. I mean, this era does want to get back to the classic Spawn stuff, but it does want to push it forward. And again, to make the Silver Age villain kind of returning thing, it is the how do we make Magneto cool? Like how like it's the Chris Claremonting of Magneto. Magneto in the Silver Age is a joke.
He's cool, but he's also just very weird.
He's like, I will mind control everyone with magnetism, and you're like,
it's very Silver Age.
Yeah, it's very.
He's a very Silver Age kind of like arch villain.
I think that like Jason Wynn's plan here, like, everybody's gonna know about him, and then they're gonna hunt him. Feels like Silver Age J. Jonah Jameson, you know?
Yeah, it feels like a Batman plot or something, or like Lex Luthor. It's very Lex Luthor, like, I'll expose the truth about Superman.
That he's an alien, and you're like, I think everybody gets that.
I think y'all know.
Yeah.
So, fine.
I guess we're getting into final thoughts a little bit early here, which is fine.
Yeah.
I am fine with this 2-parter. I think it's fine. I think I ended up liking it a little bit more as we went through it.
As often happens. It's fun. Talking about comics has a way of making them feel more worth digging into, and I think these comics benefited from that. Honestly, if we're going to go ahead and do final thoughts, which like, we can do that and then get into back matter, my final thoughts are these issues had some high points. They had some low points that really just consist of some inconsistent visual storytelling, and not even like bad to look at, but just like hard to decipher. It's a fine line. It's a razor's edge. Like I said, compelling artwork either way. And Steve Niles did an interesting Spawn. I kind of liked his narration. He had some very economical storytelling moments.
Mm-hmm.
Like the setup of Overtkill. Didn't need any more than we got. Perfect. Nailed it.
Yeah. I think Steve Niles is one of those guys. One of the books I really like by him is one of Fiona Staples' like early things, Mystery Society.
Mm-hmm. Pretty good.
The guy can he'll spin a yarn, You'll have a good time with a Steve Niles comic.
Yeah, he's not bad.
9 times out of 10. And to have him like show up in the Spawn-verse, I was like, yeah, okay, cool. You actually are the right kind of guy for this kind of vibe. I think some of the narration I could take or leave. Some of it I really liked though. So it ended up kind of balancing out. And overall, we started this by saying these are just 2 of the Spawn comics of all time, but by the end of it, they're pretty okay.
They're good.
This era so far hasn't found its identity. Much like Angel Medina kind of learning the job on the job, it feels like our direction hasn't been fully given to us yet.
Yeah.
This issue tries to put us on a path, and we're going to find out how well it does that. So, my feelings are that it's good to see some continued development. This is definitely a different book than it was 50 issues ago, than it was 25 issues ago. And I'm curious just to see where it goes.
Yeah.
I'm whelmed, if that, you know what I mean? I'm whelmed.
Yeah.
So, a little bit of back matter. I have issue 105, and it has Vash the Stampede on the back of it, which was like one of my favorite. Trigun was one of my favorite animes.
Oh, yeah, I remember that when that figure came out.
Yeah. I think I might have had that one. I'm Might still have it at my parents' house. I don't even know. At Toy Fair 2001, McFarlane Toys had a lot of Spawn, Kid Rock, H.R. Giger,
Hell yeah.
Rat Fink, Movie Maniacs, AC/DC, Metallica, Jerry Garcia, Metal Gear Solid 2, and Shrek. So, big year.
Hell yeah.
For McFarlane Toys.
Hell yeah. You know what? Shout out to my partner, Killian, because she is playing Fiona.
Right?
Yeah.
Amazing.
She's at rehearsals tonight.
So, in the spawning ground, it says, Dear Mr. McFarlane, I have to say, issue 100 was incredible. But boy, was it a heartbreaker. I was crushed when Angela died. I just stared at the page for 15 minutes.
Relatable.
I am amazed you're willing to write such an incredible character out of the book. She was my favorite. I'm also sorry to see Greg Capullo go. He's an important part of Spawn I know and love today, but I'm excited to see what the new artist can do. Well, enough lamenting about the past. I have a few questions regarding the comic book business. I love to draw in ink and I want to be a comic book artist someday, but I really don't know where to start. I'd appreciate your help. 1, what kind of classes do you need to take in college to be a comic book artist? Are there internships at comic book production companies? 2, if I wanted to develop my own characters and storyline like my hero, you, really gassing Todd up on this one. Would I have to make my own independent comic book company? 3, if it isn't a secret, what medium do you do your wonderfully vibrant colors in? Is it watercolor? Also, do the inkers do them in ink pen or with a brush? I think I will stop taking up your time, but I have a few final thoughts. You answer a lot of letters saying that comics are not a big priority for you anymore because of the shrinking industry. Well, I can understand that, but I think it may bounce back. You never know. And I know that with such a loyal fan base, you will always sell Spawn comics, and you will sell at least one of those to me. I really do admire your hard work and how you branched out of the comic book business. Thanks for your time. Your awestruck fan, Katie Gillivan, Blackhawk, Colorado. What a kind letter,
It's a
Katie.
great letter.
That was a great letter with some very nice questions. Yeah. Todd says, glad you enjoyed issue 100. One of the big reasons for writing Angela out of the book is when you have a character that has been around as long as Spawn has, sometimes dramatic changes need to be made so the reader doesn't become bored. Every now and then you need to shake up the scenario. In
also,
this case,
a lawsuit might be happening at some point in your life, and you might have to deal with some part of that.
Yeah. In this case, we took a character that a lot of people like and showed no one is safe in the book. You know, this is still early enough in the internet that, like, if you didn't hear about the lawsuit, like, there's no, like, super easy way.
You might not know.
Yeah. So, and also, it's still maybe a year or two away.
Yeah, probably.
But he's probably getting the feeling of, like, I should probably not do this.
I should probably stop using this character that this guy's asking me about royalties for all the time.
Yeah. When I randomly send him $10,000.
Yeah.
Let's answer your questions. 1, you asked how to get into comics. Besides the obvious, you need to practice your drawing abilities, send your samples in to different companies, attend conventions, get input from other artists as to what they think of your ability, and check into whether the comic book companies offer internships. Different companies offer different programs depending on whether you're willing to relocate to their offices. For the most part, it's a lot of perseverance and skill that will eventually get you through the front door. That's true. 2, developing your own character depends on what the reason is. If you're doing it because you want to do a book and sell it and no one is giving you work, the best thing to do is an independent comic. If it's to hone your drawing abilities, you may want to put in 1, 2, or 3 established characters along with your own into a couple pages so comic book companies can see that you can draw the A-list superheroes. For instance, if you're going to do a couple of Captain America pages, it would not only show the editors at Marvel that you could do a solid superhero, but DC and Image would also be able to see that you had the ability to do straightforward superhero storytelling. 3, we don't use watercolors unless you're talking about some of the covers done by Ashley Wood, who uses a combination of painting and computer graphics. For the most part, the interior pages of the traditional comic books we do are done in Photoshop on Macintosh computers. We think we've raised the bar on the coloring aspect. There are colorists whose skill is completely derived by studying and practicing the software available to them in the computer world. In closing, it's not that comic books aren't a priority, but in any given workday, I have to do things that are sometimes a hotter topic. Some days it is comic books, and we spend a vast majority of the day going over plots, stories, art, and writing. Comic books are always going to be a part of my life. As a side note, Greg is still very much involved in our world. He's still doing the covers for Spawn and is currently, after taking a much-needed vacation, finishing up his own character called Creech. When he finishes that, we're all going to sit down and reassess what he wants to do in the future. So yeah, pretty nice. And also super consistent with what he said to us 30 years later, where he was like,
right?
Hey, I'm still working on the lettering. I'm still moving dialogue boxes around, like.
Yep. The thing is, before they started doing computer coloring, just as a side note, they did do mostly watercolor inks is how they were hand colored. They made color guides that way that were then photostated and turned into I guess depending on the printing method, the screened sheets and stuff. Pretty cool. Yeah, great letter.
Well, we also got a message.
Yes, we did.
On the air. We got a really nice message the other day, so I want to shout out this member of the Spawn community who said,
the Spawn community.
This was Brandon. And Brandon said, Hey, I just found you guys when I was trying to find some discussions on Spawn as a comic. To my surprise, there wasn't a lot of content on both Reddit or YouTube. I'm pretty new to comics, went to my local store, didn't really know where to start. I was overwhelmed by the amount of choices, but of course, the thing that seemed easiest to start with was Spawn, being that they had the 6 compendium volumes in neat order. I was torn between Spawn and Hellboy, but Hellboy seems more daunting. I highly agree. It is more daunting.
I actually do agree. Great comics.
Incredible comic, but it is very hard to read.
It's like marbles running all over the place a lot of the time.
And the library editions are beautiful, but they are very expensive.
Yes.
All this to say, I started reading Spawn at the same time I started listening to your podcast. I read a couple of issues ahead and then listen to the podcast the next day at work. Almost through the first compendium. I know you guys just got through the second. Basically been binging the comics and your podcast the last week. And I find myself sad that eventually I'll have to wait for you to drop more episodes. All this to say, I appreciate what y'all are doing. It's very informative. And I love how your passion for comics and the art form as a whole comes through. I wouldn't mind longer episodes with more tangents.
Hey.
Thanks again for what you do.
Wish granted.
And thanks for the time it took to read all this. Well, hey, thanks so much, Brandon. We really appreciate it. Nobody ever sends us messages or letters, so we're happy. You're the first one that we get to read on the air. It's only taken.
I think we've read a couple reviews, but there's a very, very nice email.
This is a direct.
You know what? Thanks so much for listening. I'm so glad that you're having the experience of digging into a podcast with us, because that's the thing I've done with many shows myself, and it's just cool to know that we get to share that with some listeners. So the Spawn community grows a little bit every day, and you are a valued member of it, Brandon.
Hell yeah. Your computer's almost dead, so you got any recommendations for our listeners this week?
Yeah, I'm not like in a huge rush, but so I've got 2 recommendations. I'll give 2 good ones. Was there any other like big letters or anything we needed to go over? Anything?
Nah, there's only the spawning ground starts to get a little less these days as printing costs are going up and Todd is trying to keep the book the same price.
Right.
We're seeing way less ads in the back. We're seeing like way less spawning ground.
Right.
So it's like 1 letter per issue.
Well, that was a great letter though. So I'm going to recommend 2 things. One of them is a comic. You can probably get it online or read it online. It is called A Night of Revelry. It is a little zine comic by this queer artist, Havivah Saltz. That's Havivah Saltz. And I picked it up at Pride. This comic, it's just a little zine comic. It's kind of a lesbian fairy tale about a knight and a jester falling in love. And I thought it was just really cute, really good storytelling, really fun art. And you can follow their Instagram if you want. It's Havidoodles, HAVI.doodles. So I highly recommend that. Check them out. The other thing I recommend is read some history. Learn some history. Pick any era of human reality that you're interested in and pick 3 books that seem to be highly regarded and read them. Or find a podcast that covers it. Just anything that covers some era of history that you're interested in. Could be modern history, could be ancient history. The thing I want you to do when you do that is just think about how similar people are and how many lessons we can learn when we actually pay attention to where we've been. Because people haven't changed that much in the time that we've been on Earth. And it's kind of fun and interesting to get to see that. And it also, I think, will just provide us some good insight into our modern lives if we pay attention to where we've been.
Hell yeah, I love that. My recommendations this week, I only have one. I have two. I have one. I don't know.
Okay.
I have this one, which is West Hollywood Monster Squad by my friend Bradley Clayton, written by Sina Grace. It came out a couple months ago, but it's the last day of Pride as this episode comes out, so I'm going to highlight some queer comics.
Yeah.
And West Hollywood Monster Squad is a group of high schoolers get more than they bargained for when a drag show they're attending is attacked by monsters. Funny little YA graphic novel.
Sounds great. Bradley's an incredible artist, so I'm sure that is awesome.
Friend of the pod.
I'll have to check that out.
We should have Bradley
on. Why not?
Talk about some Spawn. I don't even know if they like Spawn, but I guess we'll find out.
Yeah.
We didn't like Spawn at first necessarily, so, you know.
I mean, it wasn't a huge part of my life, and now it's one of my favorite comics.
Yeah, truly.
I mean, I've dedicated so much time to talking about it. I love Spawn.
Me too. And we're out here changing hearts and minds.
That's right.
That's
bringing people into the Spawn community.
We're Spawn evangelists,
as our friends at Respawn say.
Yeah, we're Spawn evangelists.
Spawn evangelists
for the Spawn community.
For the Spawn community.
So
you finally made it work.
But I'll recommend that. And I was listening to a record by a band called Caroline. Just Caroline. They do have a song with Caroline Polachek, but they're just called Caroline. They're a cool, like, post-rock band mostly. Cool. Just really cool tunes. So
I saw Caroline Polachek live a few years ago. It was really good.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
She's pretty good. So anyway, as we always say, George, this has been a pleasure, as always.
Yeah.
So
what a great episode of Spawnography for the people.
Yes. Next episode, we are reading Hellspawn 1 and 2. And for the next
Hellspawn.
8 weeks, it is starting in July and ending at the end of August. It is the summer of Hellspawn. Hellspawn is 16 issues. We are covering all of it. We're just covering it in a row. Then we will get back to the main Spawn universe. If you hate that, tell us.
Yeah, feel free to let us know that you don't want to hear it. If you do enjoy it, you can get the Hellspawn Omnibus with every issue in it for pretty cheap on eBay. Yeah. I think it was like $25 or $20. Yeah. So if you want to read along, feel free to dig in.
And honestly, it's one of those books that your local comic shop might be able to get for you too, because it's
check with your local
it's in
first.
Print. Check with your local comic shop. It's in print. You can get all 16 issues.
Readily available.
Yeah. I'm really excited because I really love Ashley Wood's art. I've been a Brian Michael Bendis fan for a really long time. And then the second half, we get into more Steve Niles and Ben Templesmith.
Interesting.
A duo that we've talked about before, just not on this show.
That's right.
When we talked about Fell, I believe.
That's right.
So,
well,
that was just Ben.
That's just Ben.
That was just Ben, but not Steve Niles. But still, we talked about Ben Templesmith before, and I'm excited to see what our feelings are now.
Yeah.
On some Hellspawn related content. So look forward to that. But George, as always, for God so loved the world,
he gave his only begotten Spawn.
See you later, Hellspawn.
Spawnography!
Spawnography is recorded in Athens, Georgia, and Queens, New York. It's produced by me, Pierce Lyden. Our theme music and logo were composed by George Marston. Episodes come out every Monday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. If you like the show, please rate, review, subscribe. You can find us on social media at Spawnography or at SpawnographyPod. If you'd like to reach out to us directly, you can do so at spawnographypod@gmail.com. Thanks for listening, and until next time, see you later, Hellspawn. You're free. You're free. Of course. I knew I was going to do it too. I told myself not to do that, and then I immediately did it. Your fee is your freedom. Kill him, and you are free from all binding contracts.
How will I? Sorry. Can we do that one more time?
We'll start over. We're out of practice.
Frog in my throat.
Your fee is your freedom. Kill him, and you're free from all binding contracts.
How will I find him? My programming files indicate that his MO has changed. He does not haunt the alleys as he once did.
I have always found that if one makes the right kind of noise, he can be attracted.
Noise. I cannot make a noise. Fuck. We didn't say podcast.
I was supposed to say podcast first.
Yeah.
Fuck. Well, let's start over. We're keeping it all in.
Dude, this is a comedy of errors. Don't put all this in.
I might put it at the end. Okay. Your fee. These will stop becoming words to me.
Will I find him?